Chapter 5, Student Revolt. Give me a child for 8 years, and it will be a Bolshevik forever. Demoralize the youth of the land, and the revolution is already won. Lenin. American universities, instead of becoming institutions of higher learning, are fast becoming spawning grounds for sexual promiscuity, subversion, and treason. Unless discipline is restored and standards of decency and order are respected by the students, our colleges and our streets will become the matriculation centers for revolution. A social phenomenon is occurring within the youth of America, which is destroying their standards, their integrity, and their morality. When these are lost, we have lost the foundations of good citizens and a good government. Propaganda on paper, by voice, and in action are fact revolutionizing campuses. Slogans and cliches are molding the minds of the youth. Expressions such as make love, not war, have evolved into obscenity, pornography, and free love in sex clubs and sexual freedom groups. Four-letter vulgarities are becoming the conversational expressions of the universities. Veteran investigators in the underworld of dope and vice have a difficult time holding onto their stomachs, as well as their sanity, when they are called to duty among the operations of the New Left. Beyond the depravities of the body, they bend the mind with a subversion of their family, their country, and all else that is sacred. Some professors have even helped in publicizing and promoting them. The heroes of these dramas are usually depicted as socialist revolutionaries. The villains are capitalist pigs. Actors, sometimes naked or near naked, portray characters in lustful, sadistic, brutish attitudes. The coupling with political propaganda of blasphemous, sacrilegious, and vulgar sexual terms used with regard to religious themes and family relationships is a deadly weapon, blatantly used to demoralize and destroy. Another part of the same weapon is sensitivity training, now being promoted on a massive scale in the United States, including on some campuses, notably the University of California. The training consists of creating physical awareness of other persons. It is highly related to such physical contacts as between mother and infant and sexual feelings between persons. The idea is to become aware of the other person through touch and other forms of direct contact. Classes often are conducted in the nude. Congressional Record, March 24, 1969. In 1965, the Senate Internal Subcommittee released a report which revealed the success of communists in infiltrating the student movement in Latin America. Senator Thomas Dodd, vice chairman of the subcommittee, said, "Student riots throughout Bolivia contributed to the overthrow of the American-backed anti-communist government of Dr. Paz Estenssoro." In 1958, communist-led students greeted Vice President Richard Nixon on his tour of South America in Venezuela, where he and his wife were spit on, pelted with garbage, and forced to take refuge in the American embassy. The ideas for the conquest of Cuba was first implanted into the minds of college students. College campuses were particularly fertile soil. Fidel Castro's victory in Cuba in 1959 had shown what could be achieved by a small group of young dedicated followers. Castro's deeds had stirred the imagination of American students already touched with revolutionary fever. They were ripe for indoctrination by communist, pro-communist and liberal professors. There were plenty of these around ready to talk about the evils and injustices of imperialism, capitalism and the American system, and the plight of oppressed peoples around the world. Backup was provided from outside by Communist Party functionaries including Hall himself, making speaking tours of the campuses. Other vehicles of indoctrination were open forums, rallies and teach-ins. The teach-ins were a technique developed from the earlier Communist Front Study Group to reach larger audiences. Dressed up to look like fair debate, the teach-in was in fact carefully planned, timed, and supervised by specially picked discussion leaders to give the organizers the advantage over the invited opposing speakers. Planted strategically about the hall were hecklers armed with prepared questions and statements, versed in the art of stifling the opposition and swaying an audience. It also was no longer necessary to confine activities to the old secret communist cells. Radical students and non-student radicals were enlisted to organize college chapters of now national organizations formed under various banners: civil rights, fair play for Cuba and the war in Vietnam stop, the draft, academic freedom, everything from free speech to free sex. Hahn, John Rarick, Congressional Record 32469. The communist conquest of China was accomplished in a 5-step program which had been successfully used in other nations. 1. Capturing the student mind. 2. Organizing youth into communist organizations. 3. Exploitation of the group to popularity and power. 4. Revolutionary conquests to obtain power. 5. Control of state and government. Part of the recent erosions of the campus youth begins with sensitivity training programs. This breakdown of integrity within individuals is being introduced with such names as synonym game clubs and impersonal relations and human potential workshops. Federal funds are being exploited for their promotion, and some states are bringing these classes into mandatory school programs. Subversion is cunning, and it is the misuse of truth and the twisting of facts that bring about the worst form of destructions. Lenin knew the advantages of thwarting the innocent into the pernicious activities of the communist conspiracy. The communist Georgy Dimitrov, who was an instructor at the Lenin School of Political Warfare, said, "Let our friends do the work. The sympathizer is generally worth more than a dozen militant communists." A university professor, who without being a party member, lends himself to the interests of the Soviet Union, is worth more than 100 men with party cards. Congressional Record, August 22, 1958. Student group movements become another effort by communists to draw the college youth into red activities. Their strategy is to involve as many students as possible into demonstrations which will eventually recruit them into their hardcore activities. One former member of the free speech movement described his activities. "A bunch of the communist kids ran over to us and said, 'Let's form a united front.' It sounded great to us. We were suckers. The communists ran the whole show, and we were window dressing to dignify their activities. Then the administration used our participation to deny they were surrendering to communists. It's tough on the ego to admit, but the Reds really sucked us in. We were used." That story is being repeated in nearly every university in the country. As Professor Hardin Jones of Berkeley University said, "The University of California at Berkeley is annually turning out more genuine committed revolutionaries than were previously produced by the Communist Party in the whole nation. I estimate we are turning out more communist revolutionaries than we are engineers. They are going to have a terrible effect on society. A lot of them are going into teaching." Kenneth Goff, who once served as a leader in the Communist Party USA, wrote, "The demoralizing of our youth has long been the dream of the communist world conspirators." William Z. Foster, head of the Communist Party in America, stated, "Our teachers must write new school textbooks and rewrite history from the Marxian viewpoint. On our campuses, we find that tremendous amounts of marijuana, which has been shipped in from the Communist Party Western Hemisphere headquarters in Mexico City, and other dopes which have come in from Communist China, are widely being distributed among our youth. There are many communist groups actively holding forth on the campuses across our land. A few of these have already been declared subversive by the Attorney General and the Committee on Un-American Activities. 1. Edgar Hoover, director of the FBI, said through the ages, "The greatest revolutionary force has been the youth of the land. Our enemies know this better than we." In referring to the communist fronts among youth, he stated, "They inflict all the sinister purposes of the Communist Party of the United States. They employ the same techniques and have the same objectives, mainly the conversion of our haven of liberty and freedom to worship as we choose to a godless totalitarian state, where the adversaries of democracy can do as they please. Their sinister motives and attacks should be proclaimed in every pulpit and headlined in every newspaper in the land. It is also true that there are at least 1,600 teachers being trained yearly in communist schools. These schools are organized for preparing young men and women for the revolution. But knowing that one of the most fertile fields for activity is that of education, great stress is put on recruiting teachers into these communist schools, where they are prepared and subtly indoctrinating our youth. Red Shadows p.616971. By Kenneth Goff. Communist members are now being used as speakers in colleges throughout the country. One of the primary recruiting targets of the Communist Party USA is the youth of America, and the party has continued its intensified program aimed and directed at our youth. The intensity of this program is revealed in a statement made by Gus Hall in March 1963, when he spoke on the party's success in placing its speakers on various college campuses throughout the country. The youth program of the party, he said, is so important that he or any other national leader would go anywhere to meet with young students. Hall concluded that the future depends on the youth. This committee of the Communist Party agreed that the appeal to young people should emphasize three current items: peace, civil rights, and employment for youth. 1. Edgar Hoover. FBI 1965 Appropriations page 39. There has been a considerable amount of activity especially in and around the colleges, in the first place in relation to the citizens and racial discrimination, as well as for peace, abolition of the House Committee on Un-American Activities and other issues. There is a mushrooming of Marxist and socialist-oriented groups on the campuses in all parts of the country, and we have witnessed the emergence of a new and very successful youth paper, New Horizons for Youth. Communist Appeal to Youth Internal Security Subcommittee of U.S. Senator April 25, 1961. The tactics of the communist youth activities are to disrupt and detract from the anti-communist movements. Such an effort was accomplished at the hearing of the House Committee on Un-American Activity at San Francisco. On May 13, 1960, a larger mob gathered. When the hearing room was filled, a police officer acting as guard closed the door and announced that no one else could be admitted. The mob in the corridor rushed him. Someone seized the officer's nightstick and beat him on the head with it. Police unrolled fire hoses and turned streams of water on the mob. This moved rioters back from the hearing room, but did not disperse them. When police moved into the mob to remove the leaders, a wild fight ensued. About 400 policemen and 350 rioters were involved. 12 persons were injured, 6 policemen, 2 firemen, and 4 rioters. 64 rioters were arrested. 3, being juveniles, were not charged. The other 61 were released on bail after being charged with inciting a riot, disturbing the peace and resisting arrest. On Saturday, May 14, a crowd of some 3,000 milled around City Hall, 500 of them picketing with signs against the House Committee. U.S. Representative Gordon Shearer, Ohio, was present in San Francisco as a member of the HCUA subcommittee. In a speech to the House, he gave proof that communists planned the San Francisco riots in advance and were on the scene as leaders in the hearing room and in the mobs outside, directing the student rioters. A group of local clergymen who attended the hearings as observers issued the following statement, which they gave as testimony of what took place. More than a dozen ministers were in attendance at the congressional hearings of the House Un-American Activities Committee in San Francisco on May 12 and 13. What we witnessed was utterly fantastic. The shameful demonstration against law and order and against this duly constituted committee of the Congress defies description. It is our certain conviction that this indefensible demonstration against law and order was conceived, planned, and directed by a few hardcore communist agitators. Leaders of the mob included faculty members and well-known leftist lawyers for the Fifth Amendment communists. We were sitting where we were able to observe the giving of instructions by the riot leaders, who had gained access to the room. The Daily Californian, which was distributed widely at the scene, gave explicit instructions on how to harass the committee. They were told to laugh out loud to make the congressman look ridiculous. These well-disciplined mobsters laughed on the dotted line and obeyed their masters to the last jeer. We watched a national committeeman for the party line up a dozen communists near the railing and throw invective, abusive language, vile profanity and fiendish charge at the congressman. The students comprising the rear third of the audience stood up on their seats and yelled, jeered, hissed, and scoffed at the congressman. It was almost complete breakdown of law and order. The only criticisms we have of the police authorities were of allowing this element to make such a mockery out of law and order without jailing every one of the leaders. Student demonstrations are smoke screens to cover up information that might become detrimental to the Communist Party. The news media will often report the demonstration, but give little notice to the information of the committee. I have several times seen one or more of the media come to the question, is the Students for a Democratic Society a communist outfit? In the big national media, the answer is always an evasion of the question. The usual conclusion is that some communists have naturally been attracted to it, but the SDS is essentially made up of idealistic students who are disturbed by this or that. That's the SDS handout, but better information is available for free. The literature and recruiting material of SDS poses few problems for intelligent analysis. Much of its effort in recent years has drawn a bead on trying to wreck our industrial and research programs that have given us such an advantage in guerrilla warfare in Vietnam. The SDS uses the language of Mao in pretending that the real reason for these programs is our desire to burn and bomb innocent people. The tactics of the SDS are spelled out in Mao's writings. If our youth could get more of the truth about such organizations and more intelligent appraisal of the idealistic propaganda that recruits them, who knows how many that join might have the sense to stay out. But when the media make out that SDS is mainly idealistic, they are virtually recruiting truly idealistic youth to join. Documents and testimony on most such organizations are right at hand. Senate and House committees compile the needed information, little of which ever reaches a large public. When congressional hearings go into communist activities, the communists usually send people to disrupt the meetings, or the witnesses from the communist side will stage a show and make speeches until they are thrown out. As a rule, the press then headlines the antics and the disturbances, and has little space left to report what the committee learned in any more than a fragmentary and disconnected way. In short, the communists drag a red herring over the trail of information, and my colleagues of the big press go after the herring like a hungry cat. News is violence, disturbance of the peace, defiance of authority, the theatrical. Information is dull by comparison. American Legion, page 52. March 1970. Known communists and their fellow travelers are often given prominent speaking opportunities. These are sometimes innocently done and other times with utmost shrewdness. Recently, Jerry Rubin spoke at the University of Utah. His speech has caused considerable disturbance to some, while to others he was applauded and supported. Similar speeches in the same type of characters are to be found on nearly every campus across the nation. With their beards, robes, and clowning antics, they entertain and amuse, but they are promoting one objective: a breakdown of respect for law, order, and morals. The tragedy of these foul-mouthed treasonous antics within our universities is that they are gaining influence and popularity. Our youth are being lulled by the lullaby tune of the international revolutionary minstrels. Deseret News, Salt Lake City, Utah. Monday, February 9, 1970. YIPPIE chief speaks at U, scoffs courts. Jerry Rubin, one of 7 defendants in the Chicago riot conspiracy trials, called the trial pure intimidation of America's protest movement. He talked to students Sunday in the University of Utah Union Ballroom. Surrounded by hippies and interested spectators, Rubin, who has been charged with conspiracy to incite a riot during the 1968 Chicago Democratic Convention, said he is traveling across the country getting revenge. America's soul is tinged with racism, he charged. Rubin is a leader of the Youth International Party known as the Yippies. The only thing we conspired to do in Chicago was to have long hair. The members of the Democratic Party have short hair. They drink alcohol, we smoke pot, he stated. Rubin, bared and wearing war paint and a headband, said there is no such thing as a fair trial in America. The affair was sponsored by the Associated Students of the University of Utah and 3 other university organizations. Listeners were charged 50 cents admission. Parts of Rubin's speech are as follows. All you got to do to be a judge is go to a costume store. It costs $25 a day to rent these black robes, and you become a judge. And for 5 months, 8 of us had sat in the courtroom on the 23rd floor of the Chicago court building, and had our lives in the hands of a Julius. You've got to dig Julius Hoffman. On Thursday, Dave Dellinger was sitting and listening to a witness testify, and when the witness, who was the assistant police chief, lied, Dave shouted out, "BLLSHT, laughter, And Judge Hoffman said, "Take that man into custody," laughter, and that night, Dave was jailed. He was put in jail without bail because he shouted out the word BLLSHT, which is probably the most common word in the English language. Laughter. If I write a book about the trial, that is going to be the title of the book, BLLSHT. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you what I think of these robes. Rubin rips them into pieces. Here's what I think of courts. Gestures and applause, and jails, and Julius Hoffman, and all the judges, applause, that put black people in jail, that put yippies in jail, that put long hairs in jail. There's over 300,000 people in jail right now for smoking flowers. Roar of laughter and applause throughout these statements. The people who put them in jail, are people who wear black robes and think that makes them superhuman, gods or something, and they can decide that another man can spend his life in jail. Well, I make a proposal. All the judges ought to go to jail. Applause. I'll tell you what my intent was on crossing the state line of Utah. I just said at a press conference that the Yippies are moving their national office to Salt Lake City. Laughter and applause. You're going to get dope. Cheers. Sex, applause, and riots. More cheers and applause. Eldridge Cleaver is now living in Salt Lake City. Laughter and applause. Wild cheers. And just let the Salt Lake City police come and find him. Laughter. The Black Panthers are also moving their offices to Salt Lake City, and they're going to integrate the Mormon church. Big round of applause, whistles, etc. Our crime is obscenity. That's basically the crime. Saying dirty words like FCK or BLLSHT. I mean every kid's goal should be to grow up and become a criminal, Inciting to riot, that's my occupation. Child molesting, that's what we're on trial for, Whatever technology the pigs have, it's impossible. Because the Panthers are right, But Jesus was also a nigger. Jesus was also black, he was a black nigger. And that's the message we gotta take to every church that says that black people aren't equal. Great applause and cheers. Christianity brought racism to the soul. Applause. And you gotta begin with the church. And you gotta say to the church that you are pagan. You go to hell because its religion is how you live your life, and if you decide that people aren't equal, you're irreligious. What's this BLLSHT about religion? Applause. The enemy is in the White House. Loud applause, whistles and cheers. The enemy's in the churches. We're joining the black niggers, and the niggers are going to take over America. Applause, and the country belongs to the niggers. Well, it is a crazy law, and it is an insane judge, but Spiro Agnew is insane, too. Spiro Agnew is Vice President of the United States. And Richard Nixon is insane, too. He's the President of the United States. Applause. If we all become criminals, then what are they gonna do with us? There'll be so many of us, the law will become obsolete and we'll take over. That's the whole purpose. We're accused of conspiracy. Dig it, conspiracy. This is conspiracy. Conspiracies are beautiful. What does conspiracy mean? It means breathing. We breathe together. That's what a conspiracy is. We're guilty of a conspiracy. We're guilty of a conspiracy to overthrow America. A real conspiracy. The court system is as corrupt as the political system, which is as corrupt as the economic system, which is as the military. The only people I have faith in are the people in this room. But it's only the people in this room that can free us and free everyone else in jail. It's not going to be any judgment apostle judge who gets his money from the citizens that is gonna free us. It's gonna be the young kids of America. And the yippies are all over the suburbs. The yippies are everywhere. The revolution is in the living room. I'll tell you, when this trial is over, I want to be able to turn on television and see Walter bring down that map, and I want to see the University of Utah on fire. Much laughter and applause, cheers. What the revolution is about is our own lives, and we're going to fight where we are, wherever we are, and no threats are going to intimidate us. If I'm put in jail next week for 10 years, I know damn well that the people of this room are going to break down the bars and free me. Thank you. Lengthy applause and cheers, standing ovation. Rubin represented a gang. His partners eagerly plan his trips and his speeches. They are in the audience to cheer and applaud certain words and sentences. With mass psychology, the audiences are played into the emotional twist of agreement with him and his views, whereas they never would have done so as individuals. This is an old tactic to reduce the principles and standards of a group or a nation. Now is the time for men of honor to take the initiative to thwart the purposes of such traitors to our country and our integrity. Representative Leon H. Savage was one voice, at least, that gave protest to such a demonstration. He deserves a pat on the back for the classic letter, which should express the attitude and standards of every man in offices of public trust. House of Representatives, State of Utah, Salt Lake City, February 26, 1970. Commissioner G. Homer Durham, State Board of Higher Education, University Club Building, Salt Lake City, Utah. Dear Commissioner Durham, I am very alarmed about the apathy I find among administrators at the University of Utah concerning the recent talk given there by Jerry Rubin. I am very proud of the history of our university, but I feel that bringing to our state such intellectual and spiritual garbage as Rubin represents does our community and state a great disservice. He advocates burning the universities and overthrowing our government. He discusses religious institutions and leaders in the most obscene language. My concern has led to investigation of the reasons he came here, the individuals responsible, and what can be done to prevent public facilities from being used to advocate destruction, revolution, and treason in the future. On February 3, 1970, the Student Affairs Committee at the university held a meeting to approve Jerry Rubin's coming here to speak. A quorum was not present, so a poll of absent members was taken over the telephone. 5 days later, Jerry Rubin was in Salt Lake City. The committee is supposed to be a deliberative body, and I can't help wondering what kind of education and government processes these students must have had, and how well the state legislature would fill its functions if operated in this way. The sponsoring organization for Rubin's talk was reported to be the Vandals, an organization which is apparently the offspring of, if not the same organization as, the SDS. The Vandals' constitution indicates they are concerned with air and water pollution. In practice, this seems to mean "POLLUT, the air with foul language, and "POLLUT, the water with LSD. Page 2. February 26, 1970, Commissioner C. Homer Durham. The university president has shown no concern about Rubin's appearance here. The governor has said nothing. The governor had been informed at his prayer breakfast by the governor of Wyoming of what Rubin had said in Laramie 3 weeks previously. He apparently was unconcerned. Neil Maxwell, vice president, seemed not to be concerned when 3 days before Rubin spoke here. I spoke with him and expressed my disapproval of university facilities being used to tear down what the owners of those facilities, the taxpayers, are trying to build. I would hope that the Higher Education Commission will prevent revolutionaries from using public facilities in Utah to spout their hatred and treason hereafter. In my position on the Higher Education Committee of the Legislature, I will continue to search for educators and administrators who do not vigorously uphold the constitutions of our state and nation, and who do not vigorously oppose such events as the Jerry Rubin Roman Circus. I will continue to expose such individuals and seek to replace them with men of honor and integrity. Sincerely, Leon N. Savage, Representative State of Utah, LHSCW, CC, Governor Calvin Rampton, Utah Legislators, Attorney General Vernon Romney, University of Utah President James Fletcher, Vice President Neil Maxwell, Dean of Students Virginia P. Frobes,